My next guest is a star reporter who for years has been a watchdog in the media for the pro-life community. And now with her new book, she's giving a voice to detransitioners who were just children when they were influenced to take medical interventions to change their gender. This is a courageous book and a very courageous young lady. I want you to give a warm welcome to Mary Margaret Olohan, senior reporter at the Daily Signal, author of Detrans, True Stories of Escaping the Gender Ideology Cult. Mary Margaret, I truly admire your courage. Most people don't want to take this issue on because it just gets people all riled up and they get angry about it. But you didn't just write your opinion, you went and talked to children who were talked into having their bodies mutilated. How did you get interested in this?
I got interested in this because as a culture wars reporter, I was doing a lot of work on culture wars, education, abortion, marriage, gender, family, and I started hearing about all these young people who were being pushed down the road to transition because young people in our world today are being lied to. They're being told that if they are lonely, if they feel awkward, if they don't like going through puberty, that maybe they're born in the wrong body. And that's a lie. And so many young people are being sold this lie. And I know from my reporting that telling true stories was one of the best ways to help people understand the truth about a situation. And I think that these stories of detransitioners are probably the strongest weapon in combating gender ideology. And so I felt like it was really important to talk to the detransitioners, the young people who tried to do the unthinkable and change their gender, and to put their real raw stories in a book that can go out to the world and, maybe someone's not conservative, but they can read that book and understand the realities of these attempted gender transitions, and then they can know for themselves.
Because this really isn't a left or right or a conservative or liberal thing. This is really, how do you view a human being? Do you believe that they are created by God in one of two genders? Or do you believe God doesn't either doesn't exist or he constantly makes big mistakes and puts people in the wrong body? Now, you were talking to children. How young were some of these children who were talked into a gender transition?
Some of these kids were as young as 12 or 13 when they first started talking to therapists and were pushed down this path. Chloe Cole is probably the most famous detransitioner. Chloe ultimately underwent a gender transition or attempted gender transition, because we know it's actually impossible to do this, when she was under the age of 16. So that means she had to have the consent of her parents, which is truly tragic because parents are also the victims of this gender ideology madness. Of course, there's very selfish and narcissistic parents who push their kids to transition for their own benefit and for their own attention-seeking behaviors. But I think a lot of Americans are struggling with these unprecedented times.
You mentioned, and I know this was shocking, is that medical professionals will say, what do you want, a live girl or a dead boy? And they tell people that that's the option. If you don't let your child get mutilated through a gender transition, the child will commit suicide. But I've seen studies, and Mary Margaret, you could maybe validate this, that the likelihood of suicide actually goes up with people who go through this process, not down.
Right, it's a lie, and it's becoming more and more obvious every day. And I think that it is such a sinister thing that these doctors and therapists will look a parent in the eye, a parent who loves their kid, doesn't want them to undergo a double mastectomy. They think that's wrong. Their gut's telling them it's wrong. So they trust the medical professionals who say, would you rather have a dead daughter or a living son? And that's a threat to the parent. If you don't do what we want, your kid will kill themselves. And it's so evil in every way.
There's a lot of money to be made by the medical community in all of this because it's a long-term medical need. Before we go, I just feel like that the most important question, what do you say to parents whose child is struggling, and they really are, and maybe they're influenced at school or by the media? How does a parent need to approach this to give their child an affirmation and love and care, but not let them be exploited in this way?
Well, I was talking to a woman recently who I interviewed who told me that she struggled with gender dysphoria when she was a kid. She thought she was a boy. And she said that she was at a yard sale once and there was a car she wanted and she was kind of dressed like a boy. So a dad there saw her and said, oh, does that little boy want the car? And she was like, oh, yay, someone thinks I'm a boy. And her father responding said, she's not a boy, but she can have the car. And she said that moment was really validating for her because she realized, oh, I can have the car. I don't have to be a boy to have the car. And I think that's a really good example of how we love our kids. We let them, be a tomboy, grow up, but we give them the gift of childhood. We give them the gift of time. We don't rush anyone into decisions that they're going to deeply regret one day.
Gosh, I hope more people will read this book. It's called Detrans, The True Stories of Escaping the Gender Ideology Cult. I think it's a great book for parents and grandparents and medical professionals and educators, because it's the stories of the actual kids. I think, Mary Margaret, that's what's so powerful. This isn't just talking to opinion experts and commentators. This is talking to the children themselves and hearing their stories and what it's done to them. If you want to keep up with Mary Margaret on social media or get a copy of the book, Detrans, The True Stories of Escaping the Gender Ideology, if you go to Huckabee.tv, find her guest page, and we will get you connected. And I hope you get her book.